just always getting down to first before anything else as a framing, even in an initial chemistry call, is what do you want? What's your heart's desire? And then in more business speak, what is your objective for wanting to hire a coach? And it goes everything from a span from, just becoming a more effective leader, either in the current role or in their aspiration to a role they're going for, or successfully onboarding in a new role. I'm just sensing the different circumstances in someone's career. And in every case, it's increasing their effectiveness as a leader. So the conversation is about their leadership.
Right.
And in that, though, too, I always ask, what is your level of engagement on a scale of 1 to 10 in your current work and what you're doing? And if they answer below an 8, I say, if you would work with me, there'd be something else on the table, because I'm always carrying as a big A agenda, what is my client's meaningful work? What brings them alive and fulfilled in their work? And if it's not what they're doing or in the company they're in, we want to talk about that. Therein lies another really a way what we as coaches can help our clients is the courage and the guidance to find right work.
And also to be courageous enough to, have a trusted person to admit to that kind. Sometimes, in the executive coaching, people do take time to get to that level of what you said. What is the real you wanting? Is this company really fitting with your values? Do you really enjoy your work? Are you able to express yourself? So it's always moment when you arrive to this moment of truth, isn't it?
It is, and it does take, you brought up, Zoran, the importance of the trust, the cultivation of trust, which is, just jumping to that, even when someone's looking to hire a coach, you have to feel that. Can I trust this person? Because of exactly that. Because you don't know what we as coaches meet somebody, what is really happening for them in their lives and their work. But create that kind of a space for someone to go so deep to be able to look at those harder questions. Because as you said, it takes courage.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that when people look into hiring executive coach, they need to show up courageously in their life in a way that they need to be willing to be open. They need to be willing to be exploratory. They need to be willing to look into their improvements. They need to be able to, see themselves through the lenses of the coach as well, to have some of the mirroring, some of the leveling. So for me, all the executives that I know who are courageous enough to step into the space of executive coaching, they always have my admiration, so to say, because it takes that step, that takes willingness, and, they need to work to a little bit of resistance to get there, isn't it?
It's true. Yeah. It calls to mind. I often use the phrase, what got you here will get you there. And so there's that point, or in the mastery curve of what unconscious incompetence, then conscious incompetence, to conscious competence, to unconscious competence. I always find that sweet spot is that courageous moment when someone is wanting to make conscious the areas, their gaps, which in that mastery curve they would call the unconscious incompetence, so to speak. And it is courageous because you have to, I guess therein lies, and I know you and I have talked about this for years, is the real transformational work happens at a mindset level. The courage it takes to go into where your limiting beliefs are, any aspect of perspective, beliefs, systems, including beliefs about even your identity and who you are, that prohibits, that are it's a real obstacle to getting to where you want to be. That takes courage.
Yeah. And so in your work with the executives, you mentioned at the beginning of this recording that you believe that the executive coaching, it's all about, leadership development as well. And there's so many different instances. Why would the executive come into the space of executive coaching? And we will explore this in our conversation further. But I would love to ask you, what do you love about coaching executives? What is that something special that you enjoy as a coach? When you have somebody from a, let's say, international organization being in charge with a huge budgets, making very important strategic decisions, being accountable for so many people, and they come into your space. What is that you love about this encounter?
Oh, so many things. I love large systems organizational complexity. The actual context that that people I've had the honor to coach are really brilliant people. So many of them in the technology spaces. I am in the San Francisco Bay Area. But the other one is just the juice of the business drivers, of that edge, of the competitive backdrop that they are operating in to be their best and to rise. And also, I only work with cultures I completely align with. So what else brings me alive is thriving, amazing amidst, all their dysfunctions. All of them have that, but thriving, mission-inspired cultures. And it's so exciting to be on the ride with them in that business context. And the other thing that from the time I was a psych major in college and even before, is in my deepest excavation, because this is my second career, I thought, what is it that I just love speaking about more than anything else? What is my most favorite conversation to have on my life? And it's about human transformation and change. Just the amazing experience of being able to assist someone to really grow, to transform, to expand and change, and to engage them in the conversations to help them awaken to more and more masterful levels of leadership and impact in the world and fulfillment for them in their lives. I just love seeing that. And the other one that comes up is some people I've spoken with love to go in and out, like, oh, I'll be a keynote and then pop out. I really, and I know this is true with you too, I have so much fulfillment in being with someone, like taking on another human being for the whole journey, our whole human experience of being alive, for a long term. It's a real commitment to another human being, to be that. And
exactly. Be that way shower, to be that guy, to be the coach, and to commit to their life. And, I honor that about you, because you're absolutely right. I'm more a keynote in and out, and you have a long-term commitment. And we do know that it takes time for somebody to grow and somebody to evolve. And this is something that is so misunderstood when it comes to coaching as a discipline, or executive coaching as a niche within coaching, that we come in and fix things immediately, very quickly, and then we move on. When what you're saying is that you partner, and what you really enjoy about that whole journey is that there is a journey, there is a timeline, there's a partnering, and then
journey. Love it. Yeah. Yes, journey. And isn't it something, Zoran, and I know you know this from your own experience, of that joy when see the potential in the other. And the skill of a coach is amidst seeing the potential and championing that person to grow into that you absolutely meet them with greatest respect, with where they are, with no judgment, complete meeting. That's, I think, the sign of the highest respect, is to meet them where they are. And that's the skill. And then just tracking always where they are and then mirroring that back. And yet, isn't it something that thrill when there's the aha?
Absolutely.
You never know when it will be, but like the aha of like,
there's the aha. And because people are always curious about people, and they're curious about you. I know that the audience is. So how did you manage to attain that level of your personal development when you can put yourself as a coach in this state of non-judgment, highest regard, appreciation, being able to create that space when somebody can really feel that from you, that they can be 100% themselves, because it's not an easy thing, you know what I mean? So, I'm just curious if you can just recall certain things from your life or certain important points that can actually help you create that state that now positions you in some of the leading executive coaches in the world.
I immediately go to a 1995 conversation I had with a coach, and I didn't know that that was the profession I was calling, I should say, that I would end up engaging in the year 2000. But he and I had a deep conversation about consciousness growth, the journey of spiritual, conscious, psychological, emotional, spiritual growth of a human. And as a coach, he told me you cannot take another human being where you're not able to go yourself. And that is a core fundamental premise that I have seen borne out without exception when I listen for, where that person cannot go. And I remember in coaching school, the trainer turned to me in a very intense process. Everyone had to identify, where is it that you cannot go?
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised at, whoa, if they can't go there. I was just listening without judgment, but I went, I don't think you're going to be able to be a coach, because cultivating a capacity to be with what is, no matter what, and the practices that I've had to do. It's do the work so you can do the work, I think, in essence, would be another thing I'd say. I'm still constantly doing the work so I can do the work. And just years, decades of teachers, mentors, transformational initiatory experiences to do my own journey of healing and understanding the nature of how one becomes whole, and so many different concepts of my own inner meaning making system, plus a fascination with how people make meaning out of where they are and learning more about that, all to create a never expanding container to be able to hold more and more complexity, intensity, the ups and downs, like a big container to hold, but also a vessel, right, to allow it to come through. Yeah.
And I love what you're saying, because in that state that you have just described to us, and how did you get into that, we are able to hold that intensity, we're able to hold complexity, we're able to even hold the stress, that is so detrimentally, used as a very negative word, but sometimes stress can also be positive in a way if you expand our capacity to hold it, right? So for you, what I'm hearing as well, that you're growing into that position when the executives can work alongside with you to grow their capacities to become that best possible versions of themselves, right?
Yes. And another comment that I've thought about on the journey as a coach in ever-growing capacity to coach at higher and more complex levels. I use the word higher consciously because as it is still a hierarchical structure where there is a growing and a higher level. And I have noticed memories, actually, with great humility of the journey of assessing my own capacity to hold and be with and meet different levels of executive leadership. And here I am 25 years in, but I remember being put forth by a member at Intel Corporation in 2011 that was on the executive committee. He was one of the top execs. And as soon as I had the elevator and got off on the floor, this woman who was the internal coach place, she said, I'd like to give you that experience and see, because you've done so well here. And as soon as I got off the floor and met the EA and walked into this office, I just thought, okay, you've got a ride here, but I wasn't ready. Yeah, there truly is if you want to call it notches on a belt, there's a process. And I'd say that to whomever would be looking for a coach. It's listening to this call. You really want to assess the coach's capacity to meet you where you are and to be able to hold a space.
Yeah.
You know, I think about that then circa 2019 when I walked into the CEO's office and realized it wasn't even an interview of this company I've been in for now over 5 years. And I was completely comfortable. You know, and I went, isn't that interesting? You know, that we do the work, right? We expand, we mature.
Yeah. That's what I mean. I think it's important for people to also hear, from the coaches who are positioning themselves as, somebody like yourself working on a very high level that we call executive coaching, that we do need to do the work and expand our capacity to hold that state of unconditional love, unconditional presence, unconditional acceptance, unconditional regard, being able to meet people where they are, and then building their own capacity to feel the same thing as well, because otherwise it really doesn't work as transformational vehicle. And you and I both know that coaching is all about transforming oneself to be able to
transform others. Isn't it true? Because it's interesting where I might hear something and I realize it's a personal trigger for me in my life. And I remember coaching skill was going, Dina, I just want to give you feedback that I'm experiencing this. And if I am, I'm wondering if other people are too. And to objectify it, but also do that self-management going, over here, that was actually a personal trigger in my own life of how that person is. But then to immediately go back to holding that person and not make, it's not about anything about me. It's about mirroring and beating back, being that really trusted source of honest feedback to the client. So there's a lot of self-management involved too, which I know you can well identify with all your years.
Exactly. So, and in your opinion right now, at this moment in time, where we are recording, which is 2024, maybe people will listen to this podcast in 100 years and like, oh my God, they recorded in 2024. And maybe future version of ourselves will watch the podcast and say, my God, how good are we? Anyway, so
was that who we were?
Exactly. At this moment in time, what are the most important challenges that you see executives are facing from your point of view? What is it that they really, really struggle? Like one or two that we can decode or talk about or highlight where we really feel that coaching can support?
Without hesitation, how to manage the sheer stress of the uncertainty, ambiguity, forces at work. I had a penetrating conversation with who I'm honored to work with is the most evolved human I've ever truly heard. A CEO person speaks so candidly, and he calls it the headwinds.
Okay.
Literally to be able to help them and to be with, to understand masterful levels of which this person has many inner resources, but to help an executive cultivate the inner resources wherever they are, like listening for where their spiritual anchoring is, wherever they go for some sense to have all the blood go to the neocortex for decision making. The level of complexity of making decisions amidst all, and I'll use this leader's language, headwinds that are unprecedented. Global supply chain, to watch this company, for instance, and other companies manage through COVID, the level of capacity and mastery of cognitive complexity and self-awareness of their inner state, that they can continue to stay clear and take care of themselves and bring in a sense of how they're keeping themselves in balance.
Wow.
There's sheer intensity of managing in the environments they are. And they're the ones calling the shots. I think I read a study, 49% of a company's performance, I'd like to look that up for an update, is attributed to CEO decisions.
Of course. Yeah, I agree. I think still we're living in that system, and the CEOs and executives, executive boards they do make those decisions, and then everybody executes. So you mentioned sheer complexity, the headwinds, making decision in ambiguity, not knowing,
Speeding up. It is
speeding
so
up,
speed.
yes, speeding up, right? So the pace of everything. And then you also mentioned that, being able to, get into the self-regulation and balance. So I missed all of that complexity that you can feel, or the executive can feel, I'm taking care of myself. I'm not losing myself inside of it. So I can still maintain my core stability, right? I can still be within the parameters of balance and not get burned out, basically, right?
Really? Oh, yeah. I just had a call last Thursday. He called me on the way home, one of the executives I'm working with, and called me in his car. And I said, "How are you?" Because I know the current circumstances of his situation. And he just said, feeling, the burnout. And I go, "What are you going to do this week?" And he's taking a day off. But I said, "You know what to do." And he said, "Oh, yeah." He's a mountain biker and he knew what to do. And I just wrote him like Monday and I just said, "So how are you?" He goes, "Back on the plate."
Yeah.
But just level of what capacity, I think the mastery is the efficiency, effectiveness, and how you recenter to every
Mhm.
sense of your inner resources to have clear mind, healthy, vibrant aliveness to continue return, right, to the moment.
Mhm.
Just for your listening ability to listen, to be able to think, just speed to decision. That's the other thing that's changed. Speed to decision on these executives, which you've seen as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like, I came with this new term from a colleague of ours who live in Singapore, and then he introduced this to me. He was calling his executive coaching clients corporate athletes. And I really love that term, corporate athlete, from the sports analogy, when the athlete is somebody who is able to do exactly what you're saying, self-regulation, self-mastery, being able to make decisions, being able to exist within the strong headwinds, being able to show up for himself, and his well-being or her well-being, the female executives. And I love that, the athletic part of it, because at times when the executives were overworked, burned out, unhealthy, it's gone.
Yeah, drinking used to be like just all the decades ago when there'd be
Yeah,
drinking.
yeah, drinking culture, smoking culture, being in the clubs, being, like unwinding the nervous system from the pressure through different addiction. That's time is gone. Now, a lot of executives do want to have long lives. They want to have an amazing careers. They want to be healthy. They want to be happy. They want to have good marriages, good intimacy. They want to have
Oh,
all
yeah. They want to see you. They want their children. They don't want to do oh
yeah.
gosh, the grandchildren. And then they get the chance. You're right. And then the other one is how many want the third act. They vibrant and contributing after and the word retire is it's moving on to yet the age of creativity. And they want
Mhm.
to, if your health goes and your legacy
Everything
goes,
goes.
your health, everything goes. I
Love
think
the third act, when we need to maintain and sustain our health in the third act, and also that's the space of wisdom as well, isn't it? When we are
truly, yes,
experienced, then it's good to share.
it's true. That's another comment as that I know you'd also would identify with is the honor and privilege we have as coaches to mirror back the wisdom our clients are garnering when they from themselves integrate their learning from an experience into the lessons learned, and then they get to carry that forward for both themselves, also to inspire, enroll, motivate, inspire their teams or organizations from the place that they've continuing to become and grow. And I just experienced such a privilege to be able to mirror back someone's wisdom.
Mhm.
It's just that pleasure of being able to be a mirror like that for someone and deeply see them at their best. And the number of thank yous, isn't it something to watch that moment? I behold it when someone goes, "Thank you." Or so,
Mhm.
and I'm just mirroring back to you. Isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe.
The beauty of
That really
it.
sound like.
You know, it's interesting. Someone's like corporate coaching, executives, I go, you're all humans.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Humans, whole persons.
Humans making beautiful and important decisions for all of us, humans who are running the business world that impacts political world, that impacts economy, that impacts, government, that impacts everything. So then they have a lot of executives that have a lot of important decisions and choices to make for all of us. Now,
Truly, sir.
what is
Take a comment on that? May I make one comment on that? The other part is the feedback. If someone is actually not connected all the dots yet to their deeper sense of mission and purpose, that's another talk about what the fire that takes no wood, the creative fire that takes no wood within, is that activation also another of the larger picture of why they're doing what they're doing, connecting that back to a deeper sense of life purpose. That's another piece and a benefit because you need all you can get to face, of what you draw from within, right? Of your own life force and your own desire to make that difference. And just wanted
I actually wanted to ask you about that, but you're like, wow, you're already there, because one of the important things that I feel that you bring, and I know of you in your executive coaching, is that activation of somebody's purpose. And I love the analogy that you use. There is a fire there, but there is no wood, or the wood without fire, however beautifully you said it. But that activation.
No wood. Yeah.
So tell us again, and for people who are listening, especially for the executives who are in that situation, why do you feel the activation of that life purpose and connecting the life purpose to the true expression of the work, it's so vitally important for all of the executives and leaders nowadays, especially amongst the complexities that we have discussed, all the coaching topics?
It's hard to not feel a projection of my own sense of the days when I just feel off, of how I remember why I'm doing anything. And I just, from the numerous cultures I've worked in, I actually, sometime I did an exercise. I've been in actually about 38, 39 different companies over the years, plus 14 years coaching one-offs, short-term engagements through the Global Institute of Leadership Development with 8 clients a year from different, but it's something, the vast plethora, the one commonality that I have observed is there's nothing more important besides knowing who you are and stepping into what, being comfortable in your own skin, that part of the journey, than knowing the why you're doing what you're doing. And you're just thinking of it all in terms of the fire of your own inspiration, of what inspires you on a bad day, on a difficult day, just to remember why. And then to expand from that, how good could it be to be in a mission-inspired company culture, that has a mission? So there's only your own personal mission, purpose, and then there's what organization have you joined and what they're up to. And it doesn't work if there's not an alignment. It won't ultimately work if there's not an alignment of purpose. I heard a Leiter. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
I heard Richard Leiter was involved. He wrote What Colors. No, he didn't do What Colors Your Parachute. He's done a lot of work with purposeful leadership. But he said there's the 2 most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you found out why. And I brought that story. Do you know, it's something, it could be in the midst of their corporate objectives and, what they've got to get done, which is also another critical part of a benefit of coaching to leaders at all levels and executives, is understanding the objectives and what their business objectives are, because ultimately it's about reaching their business objectives. But in the midst of all that, for them to then excavate the why I'm doing this, when you get someone that really, really gets it and connects it to my own deepest desire for making a difference. That's what it is. My own deepest desire for making a difference. And that's
And then there is the fire, and then there is the wood, and then there is everything, right? Yeah, exactly.
let
Exactly. Yeah, then.
let's what is it going in?
Yeah,
Let's
yeah, absolutely. Because we got into the essence of it, and I really love, the people to understand, the depth, especially executives and leaders and HR executives who listen to this podcast, to understand the depth. Because without that, we just become superficial, and it really doesn't work. And I completely agree with you. When people don't connect to their life purpose, and this doesn't align to the mission of the organization they're working with, it's challenging. Then it becomes, a weightlifting exercise, or, working against the winds, and, you deplete yourself. So somehow you need to find a way to create ideal circumstances when that alignment can happen. So I hardly support that. I see it like you. Yeah.
And go back to your statement, to circle back about the courage it takes to get on this journey, and then to decide you want help and assistance and partnership.
Yeah.
For the coach, is the courage it takes if you are not in right placement with your work.
Exactly.
To take a deeper look, to take that deeper look. And, I think this is when I look at the world, the addictions and the going to sleep at the wheel and just not able, it's hard life that is. It's like, it's there's so many rewards to being awake, to taking, to the whatever pain there is. I think there's a saying, it's Anais, I'm not pronouncing Anais Nin. There comes a time when the pain to remain in the chrysalis is more difficult than to free oneself up and to move out. Now, that's, of course, getting very, very far into the soulful, spiritual, like metaphors there in some of the poetry of our time. But I just really have the deepest respect for whoever embarks on this, whatever the context they think they're getting into for.
Exactly. Because usually it's surprising. For me, it's always surprising. This is the reason why I've opened with courageousness, because, sometimes in my past in coaching executives, they even kept the coach as a secret. They were really, seeing that as something is wrong, or they have a weakness, or because you have a weakness, you have a coach, and the coach is going to help you fix. When in a real reality, every high-performing individual, from the politics, from music industry, from celebrities around the world, from sports, always has somebody to support them to maintain that performance, to process themselves, to go through the peaks and lows, and to accompany their life. So I think that is a big sign of strength and also courageousness for any executive to say, I would love to work with a coach. And I really hope this will be inspiring for all the people who are listening and people who are considering doing this. So we're coming to the close of this podcast, John. How would you like to leave audience? Anything that comes naturally for you to share to close, or how would you like to leave people with? What is your call for action? Any, wisdom or anything that comes to you at this moment in time?
I think I'd like to leave with everyone just saying, ask the question, what is your heart's desire? What do you want? And then know in your heart, find that place, do the work to know that you can achieve, you can get, you can create what your heart's desire is. And that is an overarching statement. And in a business context, it might be that next position. You can do it, but it starts with the courage to really look deeply. What is it I really want, especially if you know what you're doing right now is not that.
Mm-hmm. So usually I begin this podcast by introduction, but it was a different one because I have a very good friend on the podcast. I mean, you are with friends, you just start with the chat, you start with the coffee, you start with the tea, you start with the connection. So I was thrilled, and I'm thrilled that I have had Joanne Brem with us today. She's, as you know, seasoned executive coach and leadership expert. She's one of the most advanced leadership and executive coaches in the world right now. I can say this. Her leadership is outstanding in this industry. She has over 20 years of experience in working with leaders across different industries. She has helped countless professionals unlock their full potential, discover their purpose, navigate complex business environments, and achieve remarkable success. What I love about Joanne's approach also is that she's deeply rooted in the personal development, holistic growth, and spirituality. And she ensures that her clients not only excel in their careers and businesses, but also have deeply fulfilling life. And I hope that you have felt it from Joanne. All of the information about Joanne is going to be on her website that is referenced to this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in TNM Coaching, Unplugged, and Zoran Todorovic Interconnected podcast. I'm really grateful and happy that our community is growing, that people are loving what we create week after week. And I hope that you're going to enjoy this one. This one was a good one, right, Joanne? Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.